Welcome to HP FanFiction. Support me by subscribing the channel. Also, like and share the video to keep me motivated to make more videos like these. This is a lot to take in, Lily Potter said. Yes, take your time, Lily, Dumbledore reassured her. James glanced at his son. Looks like we missed quite a bit. Harry nodded. After bringing his parents into the headmaster's office, they had to explain a lot of what was going on to them, including Victoria's situation. It wasn't too hard for them to accept since they already knew about the existence of alternate realities, and were aware that Harry came from one of them. Even though his circumstances were very different from Victoria's, he had died in his old world and awoke here in a new body, while Victoria just found herself in a different place out of nowhere. I cannot imagine what that girl is going through. She lost her entire reality, Lily said. They did avoid mentioning the fact that, had Victoria not lost her world, it would have been them, the Potters, and everyone else, who would have disappeared instead. James looked at Daphne with curiosity. And how did you get tangled in this mess, Daphne? Oh, well, she wasn't sure what to answer. Now she realized that it had been a mistake to stay. She only wanted to be of some help to Harry. Miss Greengrass has not left Harry's side for a moment. I believe they are quite close, Dumbledore said, giving the Potters a knowing look. Are they? Lily glanced at them with interest. Really? James raised an eyebrow. Don't you have anywhere else to be? Harry asked the headmaster. This is my office, Dumbledore responded. Harry, don't be so rude to the headmaster, James scolded him. Is this true? Lily was now staring directly at Daphne. The girl grew embarrassed but eventually nodded. I believe we have more pressing matters. Harry decided to help her out. Yes, Harry is right. Should we go talk to this girl? Victoria, was it? James said. Victoria Black, and she also answers to Lady Black, Dumbledore said. Black? Wait, isn't she a Potter? James felt like they had skipped an important part of the story. She is of course a Potter, but from what we know she was adopted by some members of the Black family when she was little and ended up taking their name, Dumbledore explained. We can also be sure that all the Potters of her world were already dead, since she was sent to the Dursleys, Harry commented. To Petunia? You mean like, Lily started. Like me, Harry confirmed. I don't remember her mentioning that name, Dumbledore noted. She mentioned that you left her with those monsters. That is also how I would have called them at some point in my life, Harry said. Oh, were they that bad? The headmaster inquired. Yes, that's all Harry was willing to say. Lily frowned. She hadn't spoken to her sister in many years, and after hearing about Harry's past, she was in no hurry to call her again. Do we at least know which one of them adopted her? Please tell me it wasn't Wahlberger, James said. He had met the woman only twice and that had been enough for him. We don't know. You will have to ask her yourself, Dumbledore said before putting a box on the table. I will entrust these with you. He moved it closer, so the Potters could see it better. There was a wand, a gun, and several pieces of jewelry. Is that a Muggle firearm? James was not expecting to see one of those inside Hogwarts. These are Victoria's belongings. She is apparently a master when it comes to ronework. She created these magical projectile weapons. This pistol used to be a wristband, and we can assume that all these rings and other pieces of jewelry can also transform into something dangerous. So we took them all, Dumbledore explained. Lily took the magic pistol and examined it. She made this. This is very impressive work. There is an Arkenstone, and a piercing charm embedded into the barrel. It's very inventive, and dangerous. We all saw her use a large version of that to kill a dragon today, Dumbledore warned her. I would recommend not returning anything in there to her until you're completely sure she won't use them against you. We couldn't take her family ring off, but that should be fine, Harry said. Those old rings have so many protections that it would be impossible to add anything else to them. James glanced at Harry. He was getting a bit worried about bringing someone dangerous into his house. Lily noticed his look and could guess what he was thinking. James, she is also our daughter. We shouldn't judge her before knowing more about her, like what kind of childhood she had. You're right, we should go meet her then. James nodded. Where is she? I requested Severus take her to his office. She did not react well to being here or seeing me. I believe it's better if I'm not present during your conversation, Dumbledore said. Once they were outside the office, Daphne approached Harry. I think I better sit this one out too. It's going to be a family affair after all. Harry agreed. The fewer people there, the better. Daphne gave Harry a kiss on the cheek and excused herself. I'll see you tomorrow. After she left, Harry heard his father chuckling. How long were you planning on keeping that to yourself? Harry sighed. Forever, Potter, Snape snarled after opening the door, finding himself face to face with James Potter. As pleasant as always, Snivel, ouch. James grabbed his head in pain. Do not call him that, Lily warned with a glare from his side. They came to meet Victoria. We thought they might have better luck getting through to her than the headmaster, Harry explained. Snape grunted before opening the door wider. She hasn't made any sign of waking up yet. Of course not. Unless I remove the spell I put on her, she won't wake up for another day or so, Harry said, walking into the office, followed by his father. Lily paused for a moment to greet her old friend. It's nice to see you again. They hadn't seen each other since the end of last year. Snape nodded. Yes, it is. So this is her, James said, staring at the sleeping girl on the large black leather sofa. She has the Potter hair. In my eyes, from what I've heard. Lily got closer. She's beautiful. And has quite the temper too, Snape added. Did the headmaster tell you she tried to suit him? He did. Apparently, in her world, Dumbledore was responsible for a lot of bad things happening to her, James said. Snape glared at him. How much do you know about that? He was just starting to learn about it and didn't like that Potter might know more than him. Just a few things Harry decided to share with us, Lily said. Snape turned his gaze toward Harry, trying to piece things together. Harry noticed his stare. You can ask questions to the headmaster later, but for now, he pulled out his wand and approached Victoria. Should I leave you alone? Snape asked Lily. I believe it's best if you stay, Severus. Lily noticed Victoria's robes. This girl is a Slytherin. Maybe she'll feel more comfortable with the head of her house present. Then I'm going to wake her up. Harry pointed his wand at Victoria. Finite. Victoria gasped and opened her eyes, her body contorting violently before she fell back onto the couch, breathing rapidly. It's okay, you're not in danger, Lily said gently, trying to calm her. It looked like she'd been having a terrible nightmare. Yes, you're safe here, James added. Victoria's eyes scanned the dimly lit room and stopped on Snape for a moment. Professor Snape, what's going on? She looked confused. Snape raised an eyebrow. Have you forgotten our conversation at the headmaster's office? Victoria gasped. That was real? No, that can't be. She appeared to be in shock. It was as real as it could be. I won't claim to understand everything, but Snape gave Harry a passing glance. You're no longer in your own world. Victoria stared at Harry. Then you are Harry James Potter. I am the you of this world, Harry said, though that wasn't exactly true. But he didn't want to confuse her further. He then pointed at his parents. And these two, can you tell who they are? You must have seen some pictures of them in your past. Victoria looked at Lily and James for a long minute before it clicked. You can't be alive. Things went differently here. They were never killed during the war, and they also have 2 more daughters. Harry explained. Really? Victoria looked at them in shock. It's true, their names are Holly and Lyra. Lily said. I'm sorry we couldn't be there for you in, your world, James said. I wish we had. Yes, and I'm sorry that my sister treated you badly, Lily added, pained. Victoria shook her head. I never blamed you two for that. I left that place before my 7th birthday. Haven't seen them since. We were told you were taken in by the Black family. How did that happen? James asked. I mean, my mother was a Black, but they never showed any interest in my family after she left. I don't think our families were on very good terms. It was thanks to Sirius, Victoria revealed. A soft smile appeared on her face as she mentioned the name. Sirius. James was surprised to hear that name, but then realized that he must have been alive in other realities, even though he died early in theirs. He took care of you. Oh yes. Him and my adoptive mother Cassiopeia Black. She got Sirius out of Azkaban. And after he recovered, he started asking questions about you two and then, about me. It took them almost a year to find out where Dumbledore had put me, and when they did, they rescued me without a second thought. Victoria smiled as she recounted this. Sirius saved you. James couldn't help but feel emotional hearing about his old best friend. Lily placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Well, we did name him your godfather for a reason. He was reckless but also reliable and loyal. Sirius showed me a lot of pictures of you two. You do look somewhat different though, Victoria said. They are a lot older, Harry pointed out. Harry? Lily frowned. She didn't like being reminded of that. Say, Victoria, James began. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. So, would you like to come stay with us for a while? You mean at your house? Victoria asked. It could also be your home, if you want it to be. But we won't pressure you. You have a lot to process right now. I would love to learn more about you, Lily told her. Victoria glanced at Snape. You can trust them, at least Lily, Snape said. Hey, James protested. Victoria considered it for a moment. I do need a quiet place to think about what to do next. She didn't feel comfortable staying at Hogwarts with the headmaster, especially without her old protections. She looked at the Potters, trying to gauge whether she could trust them. It seemed, at least for now, like her best option. I'll go with you, Victoria finally said. Miss Umbridge, Lyra stared at the back of her teacher. The woman had been acting strange all morning, and now she was just staring at the board without saying a word. Ginny nudged her and made a gesture for her to shut up. Right. Lyra realized her mistake and kept quiet. Professor Umbridge really hated them for some reason, and gave them detentions far too often. According to her brother, Umbridge had something against their family and was just taking it out on her and her friends, because she was a bitter woman who didn't know what else to do. Did you say something to me? Madame Umbridge turned around and glared at Lyra. Her expression was almost vacant, like she was half asleep. No, Professor Umbridge, Lyra quickly replied. They had already gotten 2 detentions last week, and she really didn't want another one so soon. It had only been 2 days since the champion's first task ended, and she hadn't even spoken to her brother yet. Did you just yell at me? Umbridge slammed both hands on Lyra's desk. No? Lyra wasn't sure which answer would avoid detention. Are you calling me a liar? Umbridge shouted, her voice shaking the classroom. The Slytherins usually enjoyed it when Umbridge went after someone from Gryffindor, but lately her behavior had been so erratic that even some of them had been on the receiving end of her punishments. In the end, they all decided it wasn't worth the trouble and just stayed quiet. Wow, which is it? Meow. Umbridge's face contorted with rage. Lyra stared in shock. Did you just meow? Lyra, shut up. Ginny tugged at her robes, eyes wide. I did not meow, that's it. Detention for a month. Umbridge shouted. Oh no. Lyra groaned internally. Now she'd have to call her brother again. Miss Umbridge, please, be reasonable, Ginny pleaded, knowing why Lyra didn't want detention now and trying to help. 2 months, Umbridge barked. For both of you. And now get out of my class. I have to teach. The students exchanged confused glances, unsure of what was happening. The professor looked even more deranged than usual. After classes were over for the day, the 2 girls had no choice but to go look for Harry. At this point they were well aware of what was going on during Umbridge's detentions by the recounts of other students who had been there. You got detention again? Harry raised an eyebrow, clearly not amused by the news. It's not our fault. Miss Umbridge is unusually crazy today, Lyra told him, avoiding direct eye contact. She's not lying. The professor has been acting really strange lately. And today, Ginny didn't know how to put it. Strange how? Harry asked, hoping it wasn't connected to anything he had done. Well, keeps forgetting things. And today she just stared at an empty board for almost 10 minutes. When Lyra asked if she was okay, she freaked out and started yelling, Ginny explained. I see. Harry looked thoughtful. She also started meowing, like a cat, Lyra added. She meowed? Harry stared at his sister in disbelief. You don't have to make stuff up, Lyra. It's true, I swear. Right, Ginny? Lyra looked to her for backup. She did meow, or at least it sounded like it. Maybe we misheard her, Ginny replied, still skeptical. The whole interaction had been too weird. Fine, I'll deal with this. Stay in your dorms this afternoon, Harry instructed. Thank you, Harry. Ginny smiled brightly. Harry then noticed Lyra tugging at his robes. Is there something else? Lyra nodded, then shook her head. Harry sighed. If this is about what happened in the tent with Neville. He saw Lyra flinch and knew he had hit the mark. You knew that?
That you all knew about our switch?
Yes, let's just say Neville is almost as bad as you at keeping secrets, Harry said. Lyra stammered, unsure of what to say. It's fine, you thought it was Neville, and actually it's not fine. Harry corrected himself. You're too young to be going around kissing boys. Wait, I am not, Lyra huffed in protest. Yes you are, but let's make an agreement. We're never talking about what happened that day. Clear, Harry suggested. I agreed. Lyra glanced at Ginny. I think it was funny, but I won't tell anyone. You know I can keep a secret, Ginny promised. Harry gave her a nod. That's true. Then if there's nothing else I'll take my leave. Ginny hesitated. Yes? Harry asked, remembering they hadn't cleared things up between them yet. She was probably waiting for him to make a move after that kiss. Nothing. It's nothing. Ginny shook her head. Harry sighed. A problem for tomorrow. He left Umbridge's office in a bad mood. He had gone there to fix the detention issue, and also to try to get some information about Voldemort's future plans. But he left with nothing. The woman's mind was clean. She knew nothing about, well, anything at all. Wait a moment, of course. Why didn't I think of this sooner? Harry suddenly realized something. Umbridge might have been obliviated. That would explain why her mind was so empty. Did Voldemort do this? Did he lose trust in her? Or maybe she learned something she shouldn't have. Several possibilities crossed his mind, but one thing was clear. He could no longer rely on her as a source of information. Even if he found something eventually, it might be a trap planted there on purpose. Now what? Harry wondered, deep in thought. The next week was incredibly stressful for Harry. Madame Umbridge's behavior was becoming increasingly unstable and deranged. She was giving detentions to Lyra and Ginny every day, and it wasn't just them, but also Luna, Astoria, and even Daphne had been handed several detentions too. She was punishing students for breathing too loudly, blinking too many times, or not greeting her with enough politeness. Harry knew he would have to deal with it personally. He didn't want to think about what kind of punishments Umbridge might inflict on her current mental state, so he always responded with, I'll take care of it. Most of his afternoons were spent coming and going from her office, and the worst part was that he hadn't been able to discover whether Voldemort had altered his plans in any way. Interrogating Rookwood was pointless since he was merely a meat puppet, and approaching him carried the risk of exposing himself to the Dark Lord. He needed to find a way to lure Voldemort out in person. The last time he came to the castle was during our 7th year, but I can't wait that long. What was the trigger? The reason he felt confident enough to take on Hogwarts? Oh, I remember now. It had been so long since those days, that it felt like several lifetimes had passed. But now it was all coming back. It started at the end of his 6th year, with the death of Albus Dumbledore. If that could accelerate his plans, if that... Harry, are you listening? A voice nearby interrupted his thoughts. I'll take care of it, he snapped instinctively, a mix of frustration and exhaustion evident in his tone. He then saw Neville Longbottom's pale face staring back at him, a spoon in hand. I just wanted a bit of potato salad. Harry had almost forgotten it was dinner time. Here, Nev. Lyra reached forward, grabbed the glass bowl, and passed it to Neville. Thanks. Neville smiled, clearly relieved. Lyra then turned to her brother. Are you okay? You look more tired than usual. Is this about the dance? The mere mention of that word caught Ginny's attention as she glanced over. Oh! Harry suddenly remembered another thing that was stressing him. The Yule Ball had been officially announced, and though Ginny hadn't said anything, it was obvious from the look she was giving him that she was waiting for him to invite her. You know she's waiting, right? Lyra whispered in his ear. I know. He wasn't looking forward to that conversation. I'll talk to her tomorrow. Great, then we can all go together. Lyra had already been invited by Neville, or rather she had made him invite her on the second day after the announcement. Neville had been awkward and shy about it when Lyra asked him, but since he was required to attend as one of the champions, he was at least happy to attend with someone he cared about. All of a sudden a loud commotion erupted in the Great Hall. Students turned to look at the teacher's table, where someone had fallen from their chair and was now making strange noises. The headmaster stood up and rushed to help, along with the other professors. "Call Madame Pomfrey. Quick!" they heard Professor McGonagall shout. "That's Umbridge," someone at the Gryffindor table exclaimed. They couldn't see much from their seats, so many students stood up and tried to approach, but were quickly stopped by Dumbledore. "Everyone, stay in your seats," he shouted with authority before turning his attention back to the situation. "I'll take her directly. I can apparate to the infirmary. Help me get her up," the headmaster instructed the others. Hagrid effortlessly lifted the pudgy professor, helping keep her steady while Dumbledore raised his wand. Moments later the two of them disappeared from the Great Hall, leaving a room full of shocked students. The silence was broken by none other than Lyra. "Was she meowing?" "She was," over and over. Later that night Harry received a summons from the headmaster, delivered by one of the house elves. When he arrived he found Dumbledore sitting alone, concern etched on his face. "That bad?" Harry asked. "Harry, be honest with me. How many times have you obliviated that woman?" Dumbledore asked gravely. Harry frowned. That was a difficult question. He'd honestly lost count. "It doesn't have to be exact," Dumbledore added. Harry thought for a moment. 100. 100? Dumbledore exclaimed. "Maybe 150. I don't know. She's been giving out a lot of detentions lately," Harry admitted. Dumbledore muttered something under his breath. "Were you aware that even a single obliviation carries the risk of causing permanent damage to a person's mind? This is why it's only used in extreme circumstances." "So how bad is it?" Harry asked, though he could already guess the answer. "Well, I had to deliver her to the mental ward at St. Mungo's, according to Madame Pomfrey, and I quote, 'A mind is a potato.' So that bad, huh?" Harry sighed. He had wanted to avoid this scenario, and had hoped she would at least last until the end of the tournament. "Let me know when they decide on her replacement." "I assume you have no say in that matter," Harry remarked. "You assumed correctly. I do not. We can only hope they choose someone better than Miss Umbridge." Dumbledore then noticed something in Harry's expression. "Is there something on your mind?" "The beginning of an idea. Give me some time to think it over. I want to know who her replacement is before making a decision." Things only got worse the next day. "I don't understand. I thought that—" Ginny looked at Harry with tear-filled eyes. Harry, on the other hand, was already starting to look forward to his next great adventure. "I wonder what it would be. Maybe a large meadow with a wooden cabin where I can relax for all eternity. I thought there was something between us," Ginny continued. "You even gave me that wonderful gift." She clutched at the golden broom pendant around her neck. Harry knew this was his fault. His misguided attempt to compensate for someone who no longer existed had led this version of Ginny to get the wrong idea. "I'm very sorry, Ginny. The last thing I ever wanted was to hurt you. But not telling you the truth now would only make things worse later." He couldn't let her hold on to false hopes, so he needed to be clear. "I'll always be your friend, but nothing more." Ginny's voice cracked before she turned and ran, tears streaming down her face. "That went well," Harry muttered to himself. Things only got worse when his sister came to find him an hour later and scolded him for how he had handled Ginny. "How could you say that to her? I thought you liked her," Lyra exclaimed. Harry wanted to tell her that things wouldn't have gone this badly if it wasn't for her meddling in the first place. But he decided to stay quiet. Part of him felt like he deserved the scolding. While leaning against the first-floor balcony railing and pondering his situation, Harry spotted a group of boys leaving the castle, deep in conversation. It was the not-so-golden trio: Ron, Seamus and Neville. At least things are getting better for someone, Harry thought as he watched them. After the first task, Neville's standing among the students had greatly improved. Many had gained a newfound respect for him, and the sheer danger of the task had made more students believe he hadn't put his name in the goblet of fire. That included Ron Weasley, who hadn't even waited a full day before apologizing to Neville and asking to be friends again. Seamus, who had never been angry with Neville and had just followed Ron's lead, apologized as well when Ron did. Neville, Though hesitant at first, eventually forgave them. He missed his friends too much to hold a grudge. Harry thought Neville was being an idiot, but chose not to say anything. This was Neville's business, after all, even if Harry would have chosen differently. None of them noticed Harry's presence on the balcony, as they continued on their way out of the castle. Perhaps they were heading to the lake, judging by the direction they were walking. Harry then heard footsteps approaching and turned around. It was unusual for students to come here at this time of year, as the balconies were completely open to the elements and the castle was quite cold. "Greetings, Mr. Potter. I've been looking for you," came a voice. You have?" Harry asked, confused as to why Fleur Delacour would be looking for him. He didn't recall exchanging more than a sentence or two with her since the year had started. It was also rare to see her alone. This might have been the first time he had seen the French champion by herself. At least, that's what it seemed. On closer inspection he detected traces of two more individuals lurking behind the nearby wall. No doubt the two girls who usually accompanied her everywhere. "And what can I do for you?" Harry asked. "I saw your incredible performance that day," Fleur said, stepping a little closer. For a brief moment Harry thought she had figured out the truth about him. But then he realized she was likely talking about something else. "You mean that squabble at the Three Broomsticks?" he asked. "Of course, what else? From what I've heard, you rarely show your prowess during classes, although some strange rumors are coming from the Slytherins." Harry shrugged. "Miss Umbridge won't even allow us to have our wands on the table during class. If I actually cast a spell in her presence, she'd go crazy, though it may be a bit too late for that." Fleur chuckled. "Yes, I believe it is. Very unfortunate what happened to her. The mind can be so fragile." "You still haven't told me why you were looking for me," Harry said.
What's the rush?
Fleur moved closer, now only a few feet away. She made a suggestive gesture and placed a hand on his chest. "I've been looking for a powerful wizard to take to the Yule Ball." As she looked into his eyes, Harry felt something brushing against his occlumency shields. "She's using the allure on me," Harry wondered. He wasn't sure if she was doing it on purpose or not. As far as he remembered, Fleur didn't have much control over her Veela side at this stage of her life. Not that it would affect him, or that she would have time for anything. He suddenly felt a very familiar magical signature approaching, heading straight for him. They both heard the voices of two girls outside trying to stop someone. "Move!" Fleur turned around, visibly annoyed by the interruption. "What is going on now?" After hearing the yelps of pain from outside, the culprit made her entrance. "How did you find me?" Harry asked, a grin forming on his face. Daphne smirked. "I have my ways." Her smile quickly disappeared when she noticed Fleur. "And now, Miss Delacour, do you mind taking your hands off him?" "Excuse me," Fleur glared at Daphne, her eyes narrowing. "I was here first, and what did you do to my friends?" "I just put them to sleep, and I told you to keep your hun." "That's enough, Daphne, let's go." Harry walked past Fleur and dragged his girlfriend off the balcony before she did something stupid. He wasn't in the mood for this. "Hold on, Harry, I wasn't done with her," Daphne complained. "Wait, Mr. Potter," Fleur called after him. Harry turned around briefly. "I can't go to the ball with you." "I'm sorry." Fleur looked stunned. She had never been rejected before. "You must be joking." Daphne said nothing, but her mocking smile said it all. "You're a beautiful and elegant girl, Fleur. I have no doubt you'll receive dozens of invitations, and you won't need to use your allure to get what you want." After saying that, Harry turned and left, pulling Daphne along with him. "What?" But Fleur stood there visibly confused, and Harry realized she hadn't meant to use her allure on him. "She did what?" Daphne exclaimed. She knew Fleur was part Veela, but the fact that she had tried to charm Harry was something she wasn't willing to ignore. She was about to pull her wand when Harry stopped her and led her away. "But Harry, that's not okay," Daphne fumed. "Leave it, Daphne. She's not in control of her abilities yet," Harry said, holding her close as they walked. Daphne eventually calmed down. "People were already talking about what happened with Ginny," she said, her voice softening. "That was just this morning. Do Hogwarts students have nothing better to do than gossip?" Harry huffed. "Apparently Lavender overheard a conversation between Ginny and your sister. You know how she is," Daphne explained. "So the entire castle knows by now," Harry sighed. That would explain why Fleur had come looking for him today. Of all days, she must have heard something. I just came to check on you. I was a bit worried. I know you care a lot for her, Daphne admitted. I feel terrible, but it had to be done. I know you did nothing wrong, Harry, she reassured him. Oh, I did, but on the grand scale of mistakes I've made, making a girl cry doesn't even make the top 10. He said this with a self-deprecating chuckle. Speaking like that doesn't suit you. Daphne took his hand in hers. Then let's talk about something else, Harry said as they walked through an empty hallway. How did you find me so quickly? He asked, his curiosity piqued. That's easy. The house elves told me where you were, Daphne said casually. They did? Harry found that odd. The house elves were tied to the castle and didn't have to obey orders from anyone who wasn't part of the teaching staff. He was the only exception because he had written his name into the wardstone of Hogwarts, giving him authority on par with the headmaster. But Daphne was just a regular student. How strange. Is it? Daphne didn't seem to see why it was unusual. She then recalled something. Oh, there's one thing I wanted to show you. What is it? Not here, let's go to the room of requirement, Daphne said. It was a long walk from the first floor, but Daphne didn't let go of his hand the entire time, chatting to keep his mind off the day's events. It was out of character for her to talk this much, and Harry knew she was just trying to distract him. When they reached the room of requirement, Daphne opened the door, and Harry noticed that it had been shaped into their usual training room. Do you need some practice? He asked. They hadn't had much time for training lately, with the whole tournament taking up most of their attention. No, nothing like that. Daphne held her wand up. I want to show you a new transfiguration I came up with. A transfiguration? Harry was intrigued. He knew Daphne's strengths lay in potions and runes. She had even expressed a desire to study alchemy in the future, but her skill in transfiguration was also above average. Okay, pay attention, Daphne said, focusing as she flicked her wand. A large rock about the size of a soccer ball appeared in front of her. Harry watched as she transformed the rock into a cute-looking golem. My sister Holly would love that. She's obsessed with golems, Harry remarked, recalling how his mother had told him that Holly wanted to attend Hogwarts just to learn how to make them. I'm not done yet, Daphne said, levitating the golem onto the ground. She then pulled out a vial filled with a white liquid. What's that? Harry asked. You'll see, Daphne replied with a satisfied grin as she poured the liquid over the golem. The dark grey stone absorbed the potion and turned pristine white. That looks like marble, Harry noted, observing the patterns forming in the stone. That's just a side effect. I couldn't get it to turn different, Daphne said. The important part is what it does. Then what does the potion do? Harry asked, intrigued. It's an anti-magic reagent, Daphne explained, pointing her wand at the golem. Watch this, Reducto. Harry watched as the spell hit the golem's chest, breaking off a small chunk. It's not perfect yet, Daphne admitted, a hint of disappointment in her voice. It reduces the effects of spells, but you made the golem magic resistant. That's really impressive. I would have never thought of using a potion for that, Harry said, genuinely admiring her work. Were you trying to imitate the white marble golems? Daphne nodded. Yes, I was inspired by them. The potion uses parts from both dragons and basilisks to replicate their near immunity to magic. I used a mixture of blood magic and potion making to create this solution. How long do the effects last? Harry asked. Only about 10 minutes. I think I can make it last longer if I figure out the right runic matrix to feed the enchantment so it doesn't wear off. Still working on it, Daphne explained. That's very impressive, Harry said sincerely. This level of ingenuity reminded him of the old Hermione from his past. Say, Harry, do you think I could take another look at those golems? It would help me a lot, Daphne asked. Harry usually wouldn't let anyone into the castle's foundations, but he decided to make an exception this time. All right, I'll take you there. Daphne jumped at him, hugging him tightly. Thank you. These were the moments when she allowed herself to lower her emotional guard. You know, since we're already here, there's something else we could do. She wrapped her arms around his neck, leaning closer. I can't say no to that request either, Harry said with a smile. December. It's been a few days since Harry tried to clear things up with Ginny, and she hasn't spoken to him even once. She's completely avoided looking at him during meals in the Great Hall. His sister, Lyra, has also tried to do the same but hasn't been able to completely ignore him. She still tries to be a good friend and stay by her side. At least he received some good news. That same morning, an owl arrived with a letter from his parents. Victoria seemed to be doing better, and according to his mother she was getting along with Holly. Not that it was much of a surprise, since that ball of sunshine could probably become friends with anyone. Neville was also doing much better now. All the harassment and mean comments had completely stopped, not only because he had earned the respect of most of the students, but also because everyone's attention was now more focused on the ball that was happening in only 24 days. Seriously, he invited you? Lavender still couldn't believe what her friend had told her. When did he do that? It couldn't have been this morning, Parvati added. I mean, we've been together the whole time. Hermione made a troubled face and looked around as if trying to make sure no one was listening. Could you lower your voices? I don't want more people to know. And he invited me on Saturday. That was 3 days ago. Lavender was shocked that someone could hold a secret for that long. Trying his best to ignore their conversation, or the side glances he was receiving from the other side of the table, Harry focused on his breakfast. At least until he heard people gasping loudly and murmuring all around him. Harry lifted his eyes from his plate and looked around the hall to see what the commotion was about. He quickly noticed that everyone was glancing toward the professor's table, and when he finally looked, he almost gasped himself. Dolores Umbridge was making her way to the table under the shocked gazes of not only the students but also the other professors. Apparently she had failed to give them a heads up about her recovery. That can't be right, Harry thought. Dumbledore had spoken to the healers who treated her in person. They had said there was no chance of recovery, as her mind was completely broken, and then she was placed in the permanent mental ward. She's back? Lyra exclaimed. Wow, I thought her condition was more severe, Parvati said. I know, I heard she was going to spend a very long time in the hospital after her mental breakdown, Lavender added. She looks different though. Right? Hermione noticed that something was off in the way she carried herself. Harry had noticed this too. Unlike her usual arrogant and confident demeanor, the current Umbridge looked very taciturn, almost as if she were tired or distracted. Without saying a word, she went to her chair and sat down between a very confused Professor McGonagall and an equally shocked Professor Babbling, the ancient runes professor. The thing was, only a few truly knew how critical her condition had been. Otherwise they would have been more than just surprised by her return. Harry was one of those people, and he found the situation very suspicious. Once breakfast concluded, the students had some free time before classes. Harry used this time to sneak into the room of requirement. The way her eyes looked, it's too similar. I have to make sure. Harry walked deeper into the room before stopping. He looked ahead of him and took a moment to focus. Speak to me, Dolores Jane Umbridge. It was a good thing he made sure to learn her middle name in case he had to do this. He wasn't sure if it would work without the full name. A few seconds passed after he activated his ability to call upon the souls of the dead. This was a sure way to check if someone was truly dead, and he had to be sure when his enemy was someone capable of manipulating death at will. Green smoke manifested before him and began to take shape. In less than a minute a perfect manifestation of Madame Umbridge was standing before him, looking very confused. She actually manifested intact. It was not much of a surprise to find out that she was dead. The moment he saw the way she moved and looked, he had made an immediate connection to Augustus Rookwood. The Umbridge that returned was no doubt a puppet, but there was a big difference in this case. What? Where am I? Umbridge looked very confused, as if she had just woken from a long dream. But the moment she spotted him, her expression quickly changed. Potter, as I thought, there's something different. Your soul remains untouched. This was different from what had happened when he tried to summon Rookwood and Parkinson's souls. Harry had first thought it had something to do with whatever Voldemort had done to them, to turn their bodies into empty husks. But perhaps the reason was something else. If that's not the cause, then it must be a result of the method used to kill them, Harry muttered.
What are you mumbling about, Potter?
What did you do to me? Umbridge screamed at him. looking down at her semi-transparent limbs. Harry smiled. He made a mistake. Of course, Voldemort had no way to know that Harry could speak with the dead, so he had no reason to damage the soul of a loyal follower. He must have given her a quick, merciful death before turning her body into something more useful. And he left me with a source of information, Harry said. No, the spirit of Umbridge screamed and thrashed, as it vanished. So annoying. Just go away already. Harry was already feeling the start of a headache. He had to force the spirit away to have some peace. Tusk, that woman is as useless in death as she was in life, Harry said with bitterness. Her mind had been so damaged during the last month that she barely had any useful memories, and a spirit can't recall something the person never learned in life. He did get a few interesting bits, like the fact that Minister Parkinson was sending people to negotiate with all the tribes of giants in the country, as well as bringing dozens of trolls under ministerial control. It was clear that he was preparing for a massive attack. She didn't know the targets, but it was guaranteed that Hogwarts was at least one of them. Not only to gain control of the most important school and a powerful magical castle, but also to complete his revenge against Dumbledore and the boy who lived. If he's anything like the Tom Riddle I know, he won't be able to rest in peace until he washes away the humiliation of being beaten by a baby. That's not something he could live with. And killing Dumbledore will also give him some reassurance about his safety. Voldemort wasn't aware that there were several other wizards and witches out there who could rival or even surpass Dumbledore in terms of magical prowess. Luckily for him, most of those were unable or unwilling to take action. Except for him, he left the room of requirement and walked through the empty halls, continuing to think about a way to learn more about the Dark Lord's plans. When Voldemort went away, the last 3 members of the Lestrange family went with him. They were likely his most trusted followers at this point, but no one had heard of anyone spotting them. Wormtail would be his next choice, but he went missing after killing Sirius, and no one had seen him since. Ron never had a pet rat either. This was likely because James Potter was alive. Wormtail wouldn't have dared to stay this close to someone who could recognize him immediately, so he probably left the country in search of his master. Those were the most likely to have crucial information, but Harry had no way to get his hands on them at the moment. If only Snape had kept his status as a Death Eater, I could use a spy right now. Harry never considered how important Snape's role had been during his past. But this Snape was different. After the attack on Harry's parents, he deserted the Death Eaters and even tried to remove Voldemort's brand from his arm, cutting all contact with them. Harry suspected that the only reason the other Snape stayed as a spy until his death was revenge for his mother's death. Since she was alive now, he had no reason to the same. He was also the one who killed. Wait, that's it. Harry had an epiphany. There was a way to solve 2 problems at the same time. Why didn't I think about it sooner? We just have to kill the headmaster. What? One of the paintings exclaimed. Did I say that out loud? Harry asked. He arrived at History of Magic almost an hour late, but he wasn't worried. Professor Rookwood didn't even acknowledge his existence as he walked inside and took his seat. He never complained or took points from students for being late, and because of that it had become a common occurrence. Harry, Hermione still gave him a look of disapproval. Do you have a dress for your date with Victor Crumb? Harry asked her casually as he sat back in his chair. Hermione's face changed colors. How do you know about that? The bushy-haired girl asked with a trembling voice, before turning to look at Lavender. Hey! For once I haven't said anything. I know when to keep my friends' secrets, Lavender said. But that is a good question. Do you have a dress? Parvati asked her. Ooh! We can go shopping this weekend in Hogsmeade, Lavender exclaimed. After successfully getting Hermione off his back, Harry decided to relax for a while. There was still over an hour left of history class, or as the students had been calling it, nap time. Once classes were concluded for the day, Harry made his way to the headmaster's office. He had already sent a message earlier that day to call for Snape as well. He knew that the potions professor was going to be hard to convince, but he was the only one who could play the role. Without him the plan wouldn't work. When he opened the door to the office, he found them both inside waiting for him. Harry, what is this urgent matter you wanted to talk about? Dumbledore asked. And why did I have to come? Snape said, sounding annoyed. I have a plan that could end this upcoming war in a few months. Harry said. This piqued their interest. And what would that plan be? The headmaster asked. Well, Harry looked at Dumbledore. Do you mind if we killed you for a little bit? Dumbledore raised an eyebrow. He was already used to Harry saying crazy things like that. What? But Snape wasn't. Oh, and Umbridge is dead, Harry added. Maybe I should have started with that.
What?
Snape exclaimed again. I'll ask the elves for some tea, Dumbledore said. He had a feeling this was going to take a while. Okay, let's begin again, Dumbledore said, adjusting his glasses. What happened to Umbridge? I saw that insufferable woman just a few hours ago, Snape asked, his tone sharp as ever. No, Harry is correct. That could not have been the real Umbridge. I spoke with the mind healers who treated her. She was far beyond recovery, Dumbledore explained gravely. Then who is that? Snape demanded. Her body was reanimated as an empty husk controlled from a distance, or allowed to function autonomously with limited intelligence. Like a golem, Harry explained. Just like Rookwood then, Dumbledore added, nodding. You mean the Dark Lord did the same thing to Umbridge? Snape's frown deepened. He didn't like the woman, but being turned into a puppet through necromancy, that was a fate he wouldn't wish on anyone. This is at the very least his third one. We can safely assume the minister is another, Harry said calmly. I don't know how many can he have, but he cannot control them all at the same time. His consciousness can only merge with one at a time. The rest of it they would just act like the mindless puppets they are. Dumbledore nodded again. They had discussed this before and it was the most likely explanation they could offer. And what do you suggest we do about her? We cannot reveal to the public that she's actually dead without explaining everything. Nor can we remove her from the school without a solid excuse, Dumbledore said, his voice laced with concern. There's no need to do anything to her. Even if you removed her, they'd likely just send another puppet. At this point Voldemort has near full control of both the ministry and the school board. Harry replied, his tone pragmatic. It does not look good then. Dumbledore sighed, his usual optimism clouded. It doesn't matter how much political power he holds. In the end, all we need to do is destroy him, and it will all fall apart, Harry said with quiet confidence. You make it sound simple. Do you think it will be that easy to kill someone like the Dark Lord? Many have tried and failed. Snape's eyes flicked to Dumbledore, just for a moment, before he added, My apologies. No need. Dumbledore gave a sad smile. You're not wrong. I have failed in more than one way when it comes to him. The headmaster then turned back to Harry. And you said you had a plan that involves my death. How would that help? Not a real death, of course, but it has to be convincing enough, Harry explained. Convincing enough for who? You don't mean? Dumbledore's expression shifted to one of dread. You want to lure Voldemort here, to the school. He's already planning to attack this place. I just want him to do it sooner, before he's fully prepared. And there's another reason for this. This will... Harry was cut by Snape then. This is absurd. You really want to bait the Dark Lord into attacking Hogwarts? Snape interrupted, incredulous by the mere suggestion of bringing such a dangerous individual to a school. Yes, but as I was about to explain before you interrupted me, there's more to gain from this. Right now what we lack most is someone who can provide us with inside information. The ministry is under his control, so it's impossible to infiltrate someone new. But if we already have someone who used to be on the inside, Harry's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Snape. Me? Snape's voice rose, shocked by the suggestion. Are you insane? I betrayed them. They'd kill me on sight. Harry, Severus is right. Once you betray the Dark Lord there's no going back. Had he not been forced to leave the country due to his injuries back then, many more would have died, Dumbledore added somberly, recalling Karkaroff's fate as another who had betrayed Voldemort. I even went as far as to remove the dark mark. Snape lifted his sleeve, revealing the clear skin on his right arm. Harry raised an eyebrow. First of all, you only removed the tattoo. The brand is still there. And second, Voldemort would consider taking you back if you made a significant contribution, like killing the last man he sees as a threat. Dumbledore was now considering the possibility. What do you mean I only removed the tattoo? That is the dark mark. I used a very ancient and complex spell to accomplish this. Snape was livid. Harry sighed and stood up, moving closer to Snape with his wand in hand. What are you? Before Snape could finish, Harry tapped his wand on Snape's arm. A wave of excruciating pain coursed through Snape, and he screamed, clutching his arm and nearly collapsing in his seat. Harry, what did you do? Dumbledore asked, alarmed. After a few agonizing moments the pain subsided, and Snape's screams died down. Sorry about the pain, but you needed to see the truth. Harry pointed to Snape's arm. You removed nothing. They all looked at Snape's arm. The dark mark had reappeared, clear and vivid, as though it had never gone. Potter, what did you do to me? Snape demanded, furious. It just brought it back into view. I told you it hadn't been removed, Harry explained calmly. A soul brand, as the name implies, is attached to your soul. Even if you cut off your entire arm, it won't disappear as long as the one who branded you still exists. Destroy Voldemort, that is the only way. This can't be. Snape stared at the mark, disbelief etched across his face. Now, with that detail out of the way, Harry said, sitting back down, can we talk about the rest? How are things going here? Harry asked as he sat down at the kitchen table. We're making pancakes, Holly exclaimed with excitement. Yes, I can see that, Holly, but I was asking Victoria, Harry replied, turning his attention to the black-haired girl who was flipping another pancake. It's fine, Victoria muttered, avoiding eye contact. Harry observed her quietly. She still seemed a bit down, but that was understandable. He wasn't a mind healer, but staying with a kind family like the Potters was likely the best thing for her right now. She hadn't asked for her wand or any of her jewelry yet. Harry knew she was incredibly smart, so she must have realized that the Potters would feel safer if she wasn't armed, or perhaps she had some hidden resources they didn't know about. Either way, Victoria didn't seem to harbor any harmful intentions toward them. You're really good at that, Harry commented, nodding toward the pan she was holding. She makes them just like you, Holly added enthusiastically. Does she? Harry said with a hint of surprise. I learned when I was little. Victoria's voice trailed off, and it was clear she was recalling something unpleasant. Just then someone else entered the kitchen. And shouldn't you be in school, young man? Lily Potter asked, raising an eyebrow at her son, who had arrived unannounced at the manor. But she wasn't too surprised. This wasn't the first time Harry had done this. I am. But today is December 25th, and I had to come see my family. Harry smiled, then glanced at Holly. And to bring a present for someone in particular. Presents, Holly exclaimed, bouncing in place. She may have been 8 years old, but her excitement for gifts hadn't changed one bit. Harry, Lily began, her tone slightly reprimanding. I know presents are usually for the evening, but I have plans tonight, Harry explained. Lily gave him a knowing look. Are you going to the ball with Daphne? Maybe, Harry replied evasively, avoiding the subject. You're dating Daphne? Victoria perked up, intrigued. Daphne had been one of her closest friends since her first year. Aren't you in Gryffindor? She asked, noting the difference in houses. So, Harry shrugged. Isn't that like against the norm? Victoria asked. It is, but I've always been an unconventional person, Harry replied with a smirk. I wish you had brought Lyra, Lily said. Victoria hasn't had the chance to meet her proper yet. She's trying her best to avoid me at the moment. It's probably better this way, gives Victoria some time to prepare before meeting Lyra, Harry explained. Why is she avoiding you? Lily asked, her curiosity piqued. For several reasons, Harry said vaguely. There was still some awkwardness between him and Ginny, and today was also the day of the ball. Lyra was going with Neville, and she probably didn't want him to say anything that could scare her date. I'm sure she'll tell you all about it during the summer. Lily stared at him, unconvinced. Where's my present? What did you bring me? Holly tugged at Harry's robes impatiently. Come on. All right, go stand over there, Harry instructed, pointing to the kitchen corner. Once Holly was in place, he continued. Now, close your eyes. Holly closed her eyes a little but kept peeking. Cover your eyes with your hands, and no peeking, Harry insisted. Once she did it properly, Harry extended his right hand forward and produced a dark hole in front of him. From the hole a small white golem emerged and stood before Holly. Lily gasped. What is that? Victoria wasn't referring to the golem. She was still focused on the strange hole that had appeared. The dark hole vanished, leaving only the golem behind. Harry, how did you do that? Lily asked, bewildered. She had seen dimensional containers before, but Harry had just summoned that construct out of thin air. Harry turned to her with a mischievous grin. Magic. Oh, come on. Victoria rolled her eyes but kept her composure, trying to remain ladylike. Oh, come on, Lily repeated, also rolling her eyes. Can I open my eyes now? Holly's impatience was reaching its limit. Go ahead, Harry told her. Whoa! Holly stared at the golem in front of her. It was tall enough to reach her chin and made of pure white material. Its construction was extremely detailed, with many moving joints. Wait, this looks similar to those, Lily began, recognizing the resemblance between this golem and the large white marble ones from Hogwarts. It is a bit similar, yes, Harry said. I made it with Daphne's help. It's much more advanced than the previous one. It can follow complex orders, and is also very strong. He handed Lily a small book. We wrote all the instructions in here. Victoria put down the pan she was holding and glanced at the golem as Holly began shouting random commands at it. What is it made of? Lily asked, still examining the construct. Just stone. Daphne added a coating that gives it some special properties. That's also what gives it that color, Harry explained. Did you do the rune work? Victoria asked, now inspecting the golem more closely. I did, Harry admitted. It's very sloppy, Victoria said bluntly. Harry chuckled. I've heard that before. He couldn't help but think of the old Luna, who also didn't mince her words. If you let me, I can make its movements a lot smoother. I could even make it dance, Victoria offered. Really? Holly's eyes widened in shock. How would you do that? Perhaps there's room to add an Ainsu's rune over here. Lily suggested, getting a closer look at the golem. Victoria seemed a bit surprised but nodded. Yes, but it would be better if you... The two of them began discussing ancient runes in detail. I have a new set of carving tools. I haven't had the chance to try yet. Want to give them a go? Lily asked. Victoria nodded. I would like that. Yes. Harry shrugged. Well, you two go ahead and do that. I want to see Gourley dance. Holly exclaimed impatiently. Gourley again? You already have a golem with that name. Don't you want to give this one a different one? Lily asked her daughter. Oh, that's right, Holly realized, pausing to think of a new name while everyone waited. Whitey, she declared proudly. Okay, she's terrible at naming things, Harry thought with an amused sigh. Harry stood near the exit of the Slytherin dungeons, using his invisibility ability. He preferred not to be seen by any random students wandering around, especially not here, as it would raise questions. Soon enough he spotted Daphne coming out, accompanied by Tracy and some boy who seemed to be Tracy's date. Daphne turned to them and spoke. I'll be fine, my date will be here soon, she assured them. Are you sure? Tracy asked, looking around. She knew exactly who Daphne was waiting for, but could not see him. Yes. Tracy shrugged. Fine then. I wish you'd come with me though. You still haven't told me what you're planning to do. Daphne smiled. Sorry, can't talk about it. I'm sure it's against the rules. Right? Tracy chuckled. Our old Ice Queen is becoming a rule breaker now. Should I be proud or worried? Just go. Don't make me curse you. Once she was left alone, Daphne walked a bit further and stopped at the next corner. Well, what do you think? She asked. You knew I was here already? Harry revealed himself, removing his invisibility charm and walking up to her. Daphne smirked. An educated guess. I figured you wouldn't leave me alone in this dark dungeon. And, she gestured to herself. You still haven't answered my question. Harry took a moment to admire her. Daphne looked stunning with her long blonde hair flowing freely and her elegant black dress. A silver pendant with an emerald hung from her neck, completing the look. You look okay, Harry taunted her. Daphne chuckled. Why, thank you. I just threw this old thing on. So, where are you taking me? The students didn't yet know they were together, and they both wanted to keep it that way for now. Plus, Harry didn't want to stir up any more drama with Ginny by showing up at the ball with someone else. So they'd made different plans for the evening. It's a surprise. Harry offered his arm, which Daphne happily took. With a soft crack, they disappeared from the castle corridor. They reappeared in a dark alley that led to a bustling, brightly lit street. The sounds of a large crowd filled the air. Come on, let's not stay here, Harry said, taking her hand and leading her out of the alley. Tall buildings surrounded them, and the streets were alive with lights and sounds from shops, cars, and people walking by. Where is this? Daphne asked, looking around at the busy scene. She couldn't recall ever seeing a place like this. This is the center of London, not too far from the Tower of London, Harry explained. I made reservations at a nearby restaurant. This is the Muggle area? Wow. I think I vaguely remember seeing a bit of it when I was little, but my parents never liked coming here, Daphne remarked. I'm sure you'll love the place I'm taking you to. Ready? He offered his arm again. Absolutely, Daphne replied with excitement. This is beautiful at night. Severus. Snape was startled by the sudden call as he inspected the exterior of the Hogwarts dance hall, making sure no students were sneaking around the garden before the main event started. He recognized the voice immediately. Despite the darkness, he spotted someone moving near the large bushes. Karkaroff, what are you doing out here? You should be inside the hall already, Snape said, his irritation barely concealed. No, I can't. You have to listen to me. Someone is following me, Karkaroff exclaimed, his voice trembling with fear. Snape had never seen the man so scared before. Calm down. Who's following you? It's him. Karkaroff's eyes widened in terror before he lowered his voice to a frightened whisper. It's the Dark Lord. He's coming for me. Snape's alarm spiked. Only he knew about the 2 necromantic puppets that Voldemort had stationed within the castle. So far they'd only been used for surveillance, never taking any direct action. Could one of them be after Karkaroff? It didn't make sense. Karkaroff wasn't a threat to Voldemort, so why target him now? Did you see who it was? What did they look like? Snape asked, half expecting a description that could match Rookwood or Umbridge. I didn't. I couldn't see, but I can feel him. Karkaroff clutched his right arm where the dark mark had once burned bright. All right. Snape realized he had to take the situation seriously. Come with me to the headmaster's office. We'll call Dumbledore and figure this out. No. Karkaroff took a step back, pressing himself against the bushes. No, I need to leave, now. Wait, Snape called after him, but Karkaroff had already dashed into the shrubbery, disappearing into the night. Snape stood still for a few moments, gathering his thoughts. The first thing he needed to do was inform Dumbledore about this. After having dinner at a fancy restaurant, Harry and Daphne moved to a different area of the building, which housed a bar and a dance floor. They had fun, dancing for a while, until Daphne noticed Harry making a strange expression. Harry, what's wrong? Daphne leaned in, whispering in his ear. Harry frowned. Dark magic has been used inside the castle. Daphne's eyes widened. Was someone attacked? Harry considered it for a moment. My sister and yours are under strict protection. It's not them, but I need to go back and check. Daphne nodded. Of course, but we can't apparate from here. We're surrounded by muggles. Harry took her hand. Come with me. I know a place we can use. He guided her out of the dance area toward the bathrooms. A staff member keeping an eye on the guests noticed Harry and Daphne heading into the bathrooms together. It wasn't too unusual, but when she saw them enter the men's room, she gasped in shock at their audacity. She looked around. The place was too crowded to cause a scene, so she hurried toward the bathroom. After ensuring no one else was using it, she stepped inside. Excuse me, she called, raising her voice. We do not allow indecent acts in this establishment. I will have to ask you to leave. She was cut off by a loud noise, and the last private stool shook violently. What the? She couldn't believe how brazen these people were, but she had a job to do. She approached the stall, steeling herself before grabbing the door and lifting herself up to peer inside. Hey, you two. You can't, huh? The stall was empty. Where are they? She looked around the bathroom and, just in case, opened the rest of the stalls. They were all empty. What the hell? The confused muggle exclaimed. Harry and Daphne appeared in the middle of a grassy clearing, the moon casting just enough light to reveal their surroundings. Huh? I thought we were going back to the castle. This is. Daphne looked around and spotted the wooden house where the groundskeeper lived, with the ominous dark forest looming behind it. The dark forest? This is close to where the signal was triggered. I think it came from inside the forest, Harry said, his gaze fixed toward the trees as he tried to detect any signs of disturbance. I didn't realize the forest was inside the wards. Are they that big? Daphne had never explored the dark forest herself, but she knew it extended far beyond the castle grounds. No, the forest is massive. Only the entrance near the castle is within the ward's range, and that's where it happened. What about the headmaster? Wouldn't he have sensed it too? Daphne asked. I'm sure he did, but he must have his hands full right now. Harry pointed his wand at the castle and sent his Patrana. A brilliant silver owl flew towards it at great speed. A message, Daphne noted. I told him not to worry, that I'll investigate. He's likely handling other things at the moment. Harry glanced at her. And don't even think about it. I'm coming with you. Daphne flashed her wand. See? I'm ready. Just give me a second to transfigure my shoes and dress into something more practical. Harry nodded, pulling out his goblin steel staff and adjusting his enchanted jewelry. He wasn't sure what they'd find in the forest, but he wanted to be prepared for anything. He then transfigured his elegant suit back into its original form, some heavily enchanted black robes he bought over the summer. Once they were both ready, they ventured into the dark forest. It should be somewhere around here. Harry used a detection spell his father had taught him, one designed to trace the use of illegal dark magic. Soon they found the spot. There, Daphne lit her wand, casting a soft glow so they could see more clearly. At first glance nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but upon closer inspection they noticed burn marks on a nearby tree. This must be it. But I can't tell what specific spell was used. Wait, what's this? Harry knelt down, observing the burn marks encircling deep cuts in the tree's bark. He cast the detection spell again directly over the marks, and found only faint traces of dark magic. This wasn't what triggered the alarm. I think this was done with a cursed blade, not a spell. Harry, look! Daphne was kneeling near the base of the tree, pointing to the ground. There were small stains of blood scattered around, pooling at the roots and trailing off in a haphazard pattern. Blood. Harry moved his light around, but no body. I can use this. Hold on. Daphne waved her wand over the bloodstains and began chanting in Old English. Slowly a red mist emerged from the blood, hovering in the air before starting to drift away. The person who shed this blood is still alive. We can follow this to find them, Daphne said. Then let's not waste any time. Whoever's been attacked, we need to help them. Harry and Daphne moved quickly through the forest, following the red mist as it guided them deeper into the trees. We're outside the castle wards now. Be careful, Harry warned. While within Hogwarts territory, Harry had access to several magical tools and protections, but out here they could only rely on their own abilities. You know, I never thought our date would end up like this, Daphne remarked, trying to lighten the mood. What? You don't find it romantic? A beautiful forest, at night alone? Harry teased. Just then, a distant scream pierced the night. Ah, stop. We're not alone though, Daphne said, her voice tense. I see it. Stay close, Harry told her as they approached the source of the noise. They emerged into a small clearing with a pitch-black pond at its center. Two figures stood near the water. One, taller and looming, was gripping the other and seemed to be leaning into their neck. Harry was about to intervene when the taller figure turned and released their victim. In the faint moonlight, Harry and Daphne could now see who it was. The taller figure was not a Hogwarts student. The limp body of the other person, their neck twisted grotesquely, was unmistakable. Karkaroff, Harry muttered in shock. The Durmstrang headmaster's eyes were wide open, blood dripping from his mouth, and a gaping wound in his neck. His head hung at an unnatural angle, his face frozen in terror. And who might you be? The tall figure, now revealed, glanced at Harry and Daphne with a calm, almost amused expression. His bright eyes flicked to Daphne. A young couple looking to spend time together on this beautiful night. How unfortunate you had to witness this. You killed him. Daphne's voice was steady as she stared at Karkaroff's lifeless form. I did, the tall man admitted without hesitation. But don't mourn for him. He was a coward and a traitor. There was nothing good to say about him. He's much better off now. Harry noticed the blood staining the man's mouth and the unnatural gleam in his vibrant yellow eyes. A vampire. The man's eyes widened in approval. Very good, you must be an excellent student to figure it out so quickly. Who are you? Daphne asked sharply. The vampire shifted his gaze to her, a strange smile forming on his lips. You two are remarkably calm for being in the presence of a murderer. How curious that is. But if it's my name you want, my lady. He bowed slightly, his tone mockingly polite. My name is Reborn Lestrange, at your service. Lestrange? But then you are. Daphne was of course well informed about Voldemort's closest servants. The Lestranges were the only ones who disappeared alongside the Dark Lord. You know about me, it's been so long since I left England. His eyes scanned Daphne up and down. She wasn't wearing her school robes, so he could only guess. You have the air of a true pure-blood lady. That's unfortunate. If the circumstances were different, I would offer you the chance to join me, but my instructions were very clear on what to do with any witnesses. Harry noticed some faint magical signatures around them. They were much harder to detect than normal magical folk, but they couldn't escape his senses. His eyes then moved to the vampire ahead. Reborn Lestrange was one of his primary targets, and now, fate had put him right in front of him. Harry had no intention of letting this opportunity go to waste, but he had to consider how to approach this. I have no time to set up any type of anti-apparition wards, so if he tries to teleport away I won't be able to stop him. Yes, he could attempt to kill him before Reborn could do anything, and then try to summon his soul like he had done before with the werewolf and Umbridge. Had Lestrange been a normal wizard, Harry would have seriously considered this option, but Reborn Lestrange had been turned into a dark creature, a vampire. One of their many names was the Soulless Ones. It was a common belief that vampires lost their souls on the day they transformed, but studies on the matter had been lacking, and nothing had ever been proven. He couldn't take that risk. What if he killed him only to find out there was no soul to call upon? Harry was thinking of a way to keep him alive, and something came to mind. He now had access to a tool that could potentially lock Lestrange in a place with no escape. The only problem was that he hadn't tested it yet. He was mostly relying on his instincts, and those were telling him that it was going to work. Reborn lifted the dead Karkaroff with one hand while making a signal with the other. As much as I would love to stay and play with you two, I need to deliver the corpse of this traitor to my master. It may still be useful after all. In his free hand he held a small object that he pulled from one of his pockets. Enjoy the meal, he said as 6 shadows jumped from the trees, landing in the clearing, very close to where Harry and Daphne were standing. Harry? These men are also Vam. Daphne's question was cut short when she saw him vanish before anyone could stop him. Harry knew he couldn't afford to waste a single second if he wanted to prevent Reborn's escape. He first used apparition to move in front of him. A pitch-black circle emerged out of nowhere, right behind the vampire. At the same time Harry was already moving his staff forward and pointing it at Lestrange. The vampire could not react to the sudden attack. This was the last thing he could have predicted after encountering the 2 youngsters. He only had enough time to lift the corpse he had been holding, and put it between him and Harry, hoping it would serve as protection for whatever was coming. Depulso. Harry had put so much power into that pushing charm that not only Lestrange and Karkaroff, but most of the terrain around them was sent inside the black hole. Reborn had completely failed to sense anything behind him. He just felt a powerful force pushing him backward, and then he was falling onto the ground. Ugh! Bloody hell! You are going to pay for But he quickly realized that this was no longer the dark forest clearing where he had previously been standing. He looked around, but other than the corpse at his side, he could only see darkness in all directions. What is this? He became alarmed. Vampires had night vision. Even on the darkest of nights they could see everything as clearly as if it were the middle of the day. But his yellow eyes were unable to pierce through the darkness of this place for some reason. It was as if there was truly nothing there. Reborn felt a sense of uneasiness and fear. His master had been the only one who had ever made him feel truly afraid. Until now. This place scared him to no end, and he couldn't even understand why exactly. but he knew that he wanted to get out of here. The portkey, he glanced down and looked at it, wondering why it hadn't pulled him away already. The small stone sphere had cracks all over its surface, and dark smoke was coming out of the cracks. This can't be happening, it's broken. He had never heard of a portkey breaking in such a manner, but he still had another way. His hands moved to his neck and pulled onto his gold necklace. This was his emergency portkey. He never left the house without it. This would take him to a secret safe house that belonged to his family. Not even his master knew about its location. Corvus oculum. Those were the words to activate it. For a moment he felt the magic inside the necklace activate and felt a wave of relief wash over him. But it didn't last long. He then heard a loud cracking noise. The beautiful gold necklace split right in half, and from the crack, dark smoke started to come out. No, not this. There was a big downside to wizards becoming vampires. Their magic worked in a very different manner, making it impossible to cast spells the way they used to. Using a wand became impossible from then on. Of course, they gained many powerful gifts that made up for this, but none of those were of any consolation to Rabastan at this very moment, as he just lost his only means of escape. "No, Master Rabastan," one of the vampires shouted. He was the only one close enough to see him fall into some hole. The others had assumed the portkey had activated. "Don't worry about your master so much," Harry said, turning around to face the 6 vampires. They all looked fairly young, but it was hard to tell with vampires. "You should worry about yourselves." "What a cocky boy," one of the vampires said with amusement. "Can we play with them for a while? The night is still young." "No." A tall blonde woman, who looked like the leader, snapped harshly at him. "Dispose of them quickly, like the master wanted. Now is not the time to feed or play." "I think we are being observed," another female vampire told the leader. "You definitely are. This forest has many eyes." Harry placed his staff on the ground, but as I said before, the ground began to shake. "You have other things to worry about." "Careful! The wizard is doing something to the ground," the vampire leader exclaimed just in time. Spikes shot up from the grassy ground, aiming at the creatures. But vampires were incredibly nimble and quick. They could also see perfectly in this dark forest. Out of the 6 of them, only one was injured despite the number of spears that Harry had produced from the ground. "Arg!" The one who had a spear pass through his right leg let out a painful grunt. The others laughed. "That's what you get for being careless," the leader said. Though she didn't find it funny, she decided to take action. "Clara, go for the girl. The rest with me. Kill the wizard quickly." She had rightly considered Harry the biggest threat. A vampire with long black hair approached Daphne while the others surrounded Harry. "Daphne, if you don't know how to conjure silver, then use fire against them," Harry advised. "Fire? Got it," she replied, readying herself. A smile appeared on the face of the vampire who was approaching her. "Poor girl, you'll never hit me with one of your silly spells. You magic users are all too slow." "Ignis!" Daphne launched a bolt of fire in the vampire's direction. The vampire easily dodged it, chuckling as she disappeared. The next instant she was behind Daphne. Without hesitation she opened her mouth, revealing her long sharp fangs, and lunged at Daphne, aiming to tear her neck apart. "Urgh!" The vampire suddenly stopped and looked down. A sword was embedded in her chest. "I never said I couldn't conjure silver though," Daphne said with a playful tone. The vampire screamed as her insides were burned by the reaction with the silver blade. The others were about to move to aid their companion. "Fullman!" Harry's cold voice was followed by a flash of light. The lightning bolt from his staff pierced the heads of the 2 vampires closest to him, leaving only the leader and 2 others. "Kill the wizard, damn it!" the vampire leader shouted, pulling out a black dagger and lunging at Harry. The other 2 kept their calm and followed their leader. They all attacked at the same time from different sides, thinking Harry wouldn't be able to take them all out at once. At least that's what they thought. In an instant hundreds of silver blades appeared around Harry. They manifested out of nowhere, and were perfectly aimed at the 3 vampires. It was too late for them to slow down or change direction. They tried to cover themselves, but they were bombarded by the deadly weapons. Silver acted as venom to vampires. A small cut or stab wasn't enough to be deadly, but if they were hit enough times or in a vital area like the heart, then they were likely to die. Harry looked ahead at the only remaining one. The leader had shown her impressive skills by deflecting most of the blades with her own knife. Only 2 had landed on her, one on her left leg, and another on her right shoulder. Her yellow eyes moved to Harry. They were filled with hatred and something else. Her squad had been annihilated in moments, and now she was the only one left. At least she still had her knife. Just one cut from this cursed blade would be enough to kill any human, no matter how skilled they were. Pushing past the pain, she held her weapon firmly in her right hand and attacked at lightning speed. She was right in front of him. Her hand moved so fast it would have been impossible to see with the naked eye. Harry snatched her wrist mid-thrust with his left hand, holding her in place. The blade of her knife was mere inches away from his skin, but she was unable to move any further. She tried to grab him with her other hand, but was easily pushed back by his staff. Impossible! The vampire's eyes widened. Even an average vampire was 5 or 6 times stronger than an adult man. And she was no average vampire. Yet this boy was overpowering her with no effort. She felt like an insignificant human once more. No. Who are you? Harry didn't answer her. I don't need minions. You won't know anything useful. His staff transformed into a silvery sword. No, please. The blade entered through her lower jaw and exited through the top of her head. It cut through bone like it was jelly. The vampire's body began to disintegrate, just like the others that had been killed with silver. The ones who were killed with lightning were still there, but as soon as the sun reached them they would also disappear. Harry's eyes moved to the dagger that fell to the ground. That is a cursed blade. You'd better not touch it. The voice came from the forest. Moments later a large centaur walked out into the clearing. Centaurs? Daphne hurried to Harry's side. It wasn't just one that had come from the forest, but a large group of armed centaurs. They could see at least a dozen, but many more could be hidden. You finally showed up. Were you waiting for us to die before making a move? Harry asked the first centaur. The centaur scoffed at his comment. We have the duty of protecting the forest, not the reckless humans who venture inside. He then looked over the remains of the vampires. But I will admit I'm impressed. I would never have imagined that some young magic casters would be able to kill so many of these dark creatures. You're welcome, Harry said, kneeling to pick up the black dagger. When the centaur tried to warn him again, Harry stopped him. I'm aware it's cursed. I'm not planning on testing it on myself. He conjured a receptacle and placed the dagger inside. What kind of curse does it have? It gave me goosebumps, Daphne said. I'll have to study it a bit to find out. He had a feeling this could be the culprit behind all those damaged souls. A powerful curse could definitely do something like that. Harry turned to the largest centaur. I assume your only business was with them. In that case we will take our leave. He gestured for Daphne to get close. Wait, the centaur called out. I'd like to know your name at least. Harry, and she's Daphne. The centaur nodded. Mine is Bane, leader of the scouts, he said with pride. I could send a scout to escort you out of the forest. It's easy to get lost here, even more so at night, and there's an acromantula nest not too far from here. I appreciate the offer, but, Harry wrapped his arm around Daphne and held her tight. I have a quicker way out. With a wave of his staff, they both disappeared from the clearing. Oh? Bane stared at the empty space where they had been standing. Human magic seems very handy. Bane, another centaur called. Do we inform Firenze of this? If these dead creatures continue to appear in our forest, if that Dark Lord thinks he can send his monstrosities into our land, we'll have to show him how wrong he is. Bane scoffed. What about the 2 humans? They didn't even give you their second names, so we don't know who they really are. The centaur was obviously displeased. I know who the boy was. That was Harry Potter. I have no doubt, Bane said. The one from the prophecy. Bane nodded. Firenze made one last prophecy before everything went dark. The description he gave me matches well with the boy we saw today. Not to mention you saw how he fought. There can be no mistake. That was the boy of the prophecy then, the other centaur said. But is he going to save us all, or destroy everything, like the diviner said? Bane glanced at the starry sky. Only the gods up there have the answer to that. Timpus. Harry glanced at the numbers. It's almost midnight. The ball should be ending by now, Daphne said, looking at him. What are you going to do? I need to inform the old headmaster of what happened, and then I'll have a lengthy conversation with Lestrange. Wait, I thought he escaped, Daphne said. Harry shook his head. No, I managed to lock him up before he did. Daphne stood silent for a moment. You used that ability, didn't you? The one from the cloak. She only knew the basics of what it could do, but she knew Harry could create pocket spaces to store things. I did. Isn't he going to die in there? She assumed there would be no air inside that space, which was why Harry never stored anything alive. Technically, he's already dead. But we'll see, Harry replied. Would you tell me if you find something important? She asked. She knew Harry didn't want her to get more involved in the war against Voldemort, but she didn't want to stay on the sidelines. If there's something I can do. I know. Harry's face was serious. I won't leave you in the dark, I promise, but for tonight it's best if you go rest. Daphne nodded. Yes, this has been quite the complete date. We ate, we danced, and we even fought some vampires in a dark forest. Let's try not to make a habit of that, Harry told her with a smile. Daphne got closer and kissed him with passion. I don't think it's possible to get bored with you. Good night, Harry. When he arrived at the headmaster's office, he had expected to find Dumbledore there, but was surprised to see Snape waiting for him. Did you find the source of that dark magic? Dumbledore asked. Harry sat down and glanced at him with a grave expression. Karkaroff is dead. What? Snape exclaimed. Dumbledore sighed. Lately, it feels like every time you come to my office, it's either to announce that you want to kill someone, or that someone is dead. You're making it sound like it's my fault, Harry said. Where is he? He told me earlier that someone was following him, Snape said. Really? Harry knew it couldn't have been Reborn or the vampires, as they would have triggered the wards if they tried to enter. This meant someone must have lured Karkaroff outside. This reminds me, I've captured Reborn Lestrange, Harry said. What? This time it was Dumbledore's turn to exclaim. He is safe, I think. Harry didn't sound very convinced. You think? Dumbledore asked. Well, where is he? Snape added. I put him inside my pocket dimension. You mean the ability you acquired from... Can you keep living people in there? I thought it was only for storage. Dumbledore pointed out, that's why I'm not sure, but it was the safest way to capture him. As long as he doesn't die in there, he won't be able to escape. I'm sure of that at least, Harry explained. Also, he isn't exactly alive anyways. What do you mean by that? Dumbledore asked. He's become a vampire. Reborn Lestrange is a vampire. Snape looked shocked. It shouldn't be that surprising. We now know that when Voldemort fled the British Isles, he traveled to Romania, and at some point he began to take over all the vampire clans there. He was accompanied by 6 others when I found him, Harry explained to them. There are 6 other vampires near Hogwarts? Dumbledore exclaimed. Not anymore. Harry paused to think for a moment. I doubt torturing him will yield much. He looked at Snape. How much Veritaserum do you have in storage? Snape hesitated and glanced at the headmaster. After Dumbledore nodded, Snape spoke. I have enough to make a dragon talk, if necessary. Bring as much as you can. I have a feeling I'm going to use a lot of it, Harry said. While Snape was gathering the potion, Harry produced the container with the cursed dagger and placed it on the desk. One of the vampires had this weapon. He opened it so Dumbledore could examine it closely. The headmaster didn't even need to perform any tests with his wand. The curse on the blade was potent enough to make him feel sick just by being this close. What kind of curse is this? It's definitely one of the nastiest ones I've encountered. And trust me, that's saying a lot. I believe this was created by Voldemort himself, Harry said. Dumbledore nodded, having thought the same thing. He must have poured all of his hatred and depravity into creating this. He then looked at Harry. And what do you expect me to do with it? Study it. Learn what you can from it. If our enemies are using these cursed weapons, I want to know its effects and if there's a way to counter them. Just in case. You probably have a better shot than me with that. You can count on me, Dumbledore said. Snape returned 10 minutes later with several large flasks of Veritaserum. Harry felt exhausted but knew there was still one more thing to finish tonight. I'll find everything I can, Harry said, grabbing the potions. Are you going alone? Dumbledore asked. It's better that way. I don't know if that place would have negative effects on your bodies, and I'm not risking letting him leave, Harry told him. I understand. Be careful. The Lestrangers are all extremely dangerous. A cornered beast will only fight for its life to the best of its abilities. Of course. Harry closed his eyes and focused. He had never gone completely inside the pocket space before, only enough to store things and retrieve them. But now he was going to send his entire body in there. He wasn't worried about getting trapped. His ability came with some innate knowledge, enough to know that he had full control of the space. This should allow him to go in and out at will. He felt a pulling sensation, similar to apparition, and in the next instant he found himself in the familiar dark place. Reborn was still where Harry had left him, pacing around restlessly. He hadn't even found the spot where Harry had stored all his things. It was apparent that only Harry could see more clearly in this place, even without the aid of any spells. However, it only took a few steps before Reborn noticed his presence. Who goes there? Reborn snapped in his direction. I suppose your vampire eyes are of little use in this place, Harry said. You... Reborn recognized the voice.
You're that boy from before. You put me in here?
I did, Harry admitted as he continued to approach. Reborn growled, his fangs stretching out and his eyes glowing intensely. Get me out of here. I will rip you limb from limb. You bastard. Harry held his staff in hand. Empty threats. Even if you kill me, you'll never escape this void. Only I can let you out. If I want to. Reborn hesitated for a moment. He couldn't tell if Harry was bluffing, but he didn't doubt that Harry had the power to release him from this place. After all, he was the one who had brought him in. What do you want? I am from a powerful ancient family, and my master is the most powerful wizard in the world. There is little we cannot obtain, just state your demands. The vampire grunted. I do want something from you, and what I want is very simple. I want to know everything about your messer, and I want the truth, Harry said. Reborn was not expecting that demand. You want to know about my master? He grew more cautious. Yes, I want to know everything. Everything he did after leaving England. Everything he's done since coming back and what he plans to do now. Tell me everything you know about Voldemort. Reborn's eyes widened in shock. You know, 3 hours later, Snape was sitting on a couch with his eyes closed while the headmaster reclined back in his chair. Suddenly a loud cracking noise filled the room, startling both men. A large black mass appeared in the middle of the office. What is that? Snape nearly fell off the couch, pointing his wand at it. His mind was racing, trying to comprehend what he was seeing. Calm down, Severus. Dumbledore hurried to halt him. He then observed the dark mass with tired eyes. Harry has finally returned. That is Potter? Snape stared in shock as the black mass began to take human form. The pitch-black material moved in an unnatural way, as if swayed by a non-existent wind within the office. Its composition was puzzling, shifting somewhere between solid and liquid. The unsettling sight even gave Snape goosebumps, a rare occurrence for him. As the material receded, Harry's face emerged. He was not alone. In his left hand, Harry was holding someone. When the black mass finally disappeared, they could clearly see who it was. Karkaroff, Dumbledore noted, staring at the former Durmstrang headmaster. He hadn't needed to ask about Karkaroff's location anymore. Harry dropped the body and walked to the table, placing a broken gold necklace and a ring upon it. This is... Dumbledore recognized the symbol engraved on the pieces. The Lestrange family crest. I take it their owner didn't make it. You killed Reborn? Snape exclaimed. Harry gave the potions professor a tired look. Did you think I'd just let that vampire go, or hand him over to authorities that are by now mostly Dark Lord supporters? Of course I killed him, but not before getting something useful. Realizing Harry was right, Snape said nothing further. I hope all of this was worth it, Dumbledore murmured. Harry sat down. Could you ask the house elves for some coffee? I don't think any of us will be sleeping tonight. We have a lot to discuss. A knock on the door echoed through the room. Come in, a cold voice answered. Snape opened the door, feeling like he was stepping into a den of snakes. The room was barely lit, with 2 candles doing most of the work. Professor Rookwood was seated at a round table, staring directly at Snape. But this wasn't the Rookwood he had become accustomed to over the past 3 months. That man was taciturn, barely spoke a word and often looked distracted, as if his mind was elsewhere, or not there at all. This version of Rookwood was entirely different. His eyes gleamed a bright red, and his expression and mannerisms were as intimidating as Snape remembered from years past. Snape still had nightmares from that era, and now he had to face it again. He hoped it wouldn't last long. Venturing further into the office, he closed the door behind him. "I was surprised by your note. You said some interesting things in it. I wonder what was that about?" Rookwood mentions. "Greetings, my lord," Snape said, injecting as much respect into his voice as he could muster. "So you do know who I am?" Rookwood's face twisted in anger. "And you dare send me a mere written message, requesting a meeting with me, you traitor!" He slammed his hand on the table, the force of the impact cracking the wood. "My lord, I was merely serving you in a different way," Snape said, having rehearsed the many ways this conversation might unfold. "So the rumors about you abandoning our cause and removing the dark mark were all lies?" Rookwood asked, to his tone dark. Snape was prepared for this. He revealed the intact brand on his right arm. "As you can see, my lord, it is still there. Just where you put it. All those years ago." Rookwood frowned. Even if you still bear it, it doesn't excuse your lack of communication all this time. How am I supposed to interpret that?" "My lord, you tried to keep your return secret. I only found out because the headmaster trusts me," Snape replied, hoping this excuse would suffice. Voldemort had yet to make his presence public, so Snape had no choice but to feign ignorance. "If that's true, then you're a lot more incompetent than I remember," Rookwood sneered. "So tell me, Severus, are you a traitor or a fool? Because those seem to be the only two options." "My lord, I've spent the last decade earning the respect and trust of your enemies. Allow me to serve you once more." "Why should I believe anything you say?" Rookwood replied. "You claim to have spent years winning over my enemies, yet you bring me nothing but empty words. The only thing I believe is that you're afraid of the consequences of your betrayal." Rookwood leaned forward, his piercing red eyes gleaming even brighter. "And you also wish me to believe it's a mere coincidence that this meeting occurs just days after Karkaroff's disappearance?" "You're correct, my lord. It's no coincidence, but I do have something to show you." Senhi reached into his robes and pulled out several items. Rookwood's attention sharpened as Snape placed a gold necklace and a family ring on the table. He immediately recognized the ring. "Rabuston, this belongs to Rabuston." His red eyes met Snape's. "I hope you have a good explanation for this." Snape recounted a carefully prepared story, ensuring to tell mostly the truth and only altering details where absolutely necessary. The Dark Lord had always been skilled at detecting lies, so Snape minimized the risks, even though he was technically only speaking to a puppet being controlled from afar and not the real man. "You say Dumbledore found him in the dark forest and killed him. The Dumbledore I remember wouldn't kill so easily," Rookwood questioned, clearly skeptical. "I can only tell you what I heard from him, but I don't think he intended to kill Rabuston. It seems he had no other choice," Snape replied. But why didn't he escape?" Rookwood pondered. "Rabuston hadn't even crossed the wards and he had a portkey for escape. What about the other vampires who accompanied him? They were caught by the centaurs protecting the forest. They showed no mercy. My vampires killed by those beasts? Ridiculous." Rookwood snapped. "It's true, my lord. Look, I brought you something else. Something I believe you wanted." Snape pulled out a small bag. At first the bag seemed small, but it continued to grow until it was about the size of a person. "You brought me a corpse?" Rookwood had no doubt what was inside the bag. The shape was unmistakable. Snape said nothing and simply opened it. "Karkaroff." Rookwood recognized the man on the floor. He looked remarkably fresh, indicating some preservation spell had been used on him. "Why would I have any interest in the corpse of a traitor? I was told Rabuston put great effort into taking this body with him. I wouldn't presume to guess at my lord's plans, but it seemed of some importance, so I went through the trouble of securing it for you," Snape replied. "I did have plans for him." Rookwood glanced at Karkaroff. "But now it's too late for that." It was likely Karkaroff had already been declared dead. making him useless as a puppet. This will make taking over Durmstrang a bit more difficult, but is not like that would stop him. I see, I did something unnecessary then. Snape looked at the corpse. Shall I dispose of it? No, leave it. It may still serve some minor purpose. Rookwood smiled, a smile so sinister it sent chills down Snape's spine. He didn't want to imagine what dark uses Voldemort might have for Karkaroff's remains. Rookwood seemed to be considering something. His eyes went to pieces of jewelry that used to belong to Ravenclaw. Those must have also been difficult to obtain. He could not imagine that Dumbledore would just leave them lying around. It was, Snape answered. I see. Rookwood became silent after that. Snape waited patiently. He knew his old master's habit of pondering in silence, and that any interruption could lead to unpleasant consequences. Severus. Rookwood's red eyes locked onto the potions professor. Yes, my lord. North of London, in the countryside, there is a small village called Little Hangleton. On the outskirts of that village, there's a cemetery. Be there tomorrow at midnight. Then we can discuss your loyalty, in person. Rookwood noticed Snape's hesitation. Unless, of course, everything you've told me tonight is nothing but lies. In that case. No, my lord, Snape said quickly. I'll be there, I swear. Rookwood nodded, and waved his hand dismissively. You may go now, I have other matters to attend to. It was a cool, moonless night when Snape arrived at the appointed location. He looked around but couldn't see anyone. He knew Harry was hiding nearby and he could only hope he stayed well hidden, for if he was discovered his death would likely be anything but swift. Harry had insisted on coming, just in case Voldemort appeared in person, but Snape had no idea what the boy planned to do if that happened. Suddenly he heard footsteps approaching. The fact that he only heard them now meant the person was purposely revealing their presence. He turned to face the newcomer, expecting to see a familiar face among the Dark Lord's followers. He never imagined that Voldemort himself would come to meet him. Instead, a young blonde woman he had never seen before emerged from the shadows. However, her pale skin and yellow eyes were enough to tell him what she was. The Dark Lord sends a vampire to meet me. Snape tried to maintain a tough demeanor. He remembered well the days when showing weakness among Death Eaters could easily lead to death if one was deemed unworthy. Do you have something against vampires? The woman asked. No. I just expected an old acquaintance, that's all. Snape replied. The woman grinned. The old inner circle? There aren't many of them left. We are the ones who currently hold most of the Dark Lord's trust, so be mindful of what you say. I'll keep that in mind, Snape replied, trying to appear unbothered. She pulled something from her pocket and tossed it to him. Catch! Snape caught it and realized it was a small stone sphere. Oh, he felt it activate immediately, and had no way to react to it. The vampire chuckled. Good luck, you'll need it. Snape was whisked away as the portkey activated. Harry watched from afar thinking, he will indeed need luck. This wasn't an entirely unexpected outcome, but it was certainly a risky one. Voldemort was being cautious. Instead of meeting Snape directly, he'd sent a disposable minion to deliver a portkey that would bring Snape straight to him. Now, the only chance Snape had of returning was to truly convince Voldemort of his loyalty. Let's hope our preparations have been enough, Harry thought. As soon as he felt his feet touch the ground, Snape's body was overwhelmed by an unpleasant sensation that made him dizzy and disoriented. Luckily there was a cabinet nearby, and he quickly used it to steady himself and avoid a bad fall. This also gave him a moment to regain his bearings and glance around the place where he had arrived. It was a large room, and more specifically it looked like the living room of a very elegant house. Something about the furniture felt familiar. He had seen those before, but before he could analyze it further, he felt a sudden urge to vomit. Ugh! He only had time to move his head down and let it all go. Snape had never felt so ill after using a portkey, and he had used plenty of them over the years. It is unpleasant, isn't it? A melodious female voice spoke from the side. This startled him as he hadn't even heard anyone enter the living room, so this person must have already been inside and he had missed it. Snape made an effort to straighten his back and look at the source of the voice. It was an extraordinarily beautiful and exotic woman with olive skin and amber eyes, looking at him with an innocent smile. It will soon pass. What you're feeling is just your body adjusting to the blood wards. Blood wards? Snape managed to say. He shouldn't have been that surprised by this considering who he was visiting. But blood wards were one of the few home defenses that were illegal to use in all Britain territory. So you would rarely see wizard families being bold enough to use them anymore. Yes, our Lord wanted the place secured completely. You see, this house has been breached in the past, and its previous owner was murdered, the woman commented. Snape glanced down at the cabinet he had been using for support. A family symbol was engraved on its surface. Malfoy. This is Malfoy Manor. He now realized why the furniture had felt so familiar. He had been here many times in the past, though this living room seemed to have undergone some remodeling. The familiar pieces of furniture were all out of place. Correct. This used to be Malfoy Manor, but now it's our Lord's house, one of many. Snape was feeling a bit better now and took a good look at the woman before him. He recognized her, of course. This beauty was infamous across magical Britain. Because of the wealth she had amassed following the deaths of her many husbands, people called her the Black Widow. Trisha Zabini, you've been missing for months, along with your son. There were rumors that you'd left the country and gone to France. She offered him a sweet smile that would put most men on their knees. I appreciate the concern, but my son and I are perfectly fine. We've just been keeping a low profile so we can serve our Lord better. Snape had to admit her act was convincing, but behind that charming smile was an unmistakable fear. She couldn't hide it from her eyes. He sighed in relief as he regained his strength. Though still a bit dizzy, he no longer feared collapsing. I see you're feeling better, then we should get moving. The Dark Lord is eager to see you in person, Trisha said. Snape felt goosebumps at the thought of facing that man directly. This was going to be far more terrifying than speaking with one of his flesh puppets. Why did I let that damn boy convince me to do this? Snape lamented. But Potter had been persuasive. He made him understand that as long as Voldemort lived, Snape would never be free. And if that monster won the war, there would be nowhere in Britain for him to hide. By taking this risk, he hoped he might bring the Dark Lord one step closer to his downfall. At least, that's what he wanted to believe. Then let's not keep the Dark Lord waiting any longer. Snape glimpsed at the stains he'd left on the polished wooden floor and wondered if he should clean them up before leaving. After all, this was Voldemort's house. Trisha noticed his look. Don't worry about it, we have many servants here. They'll clean it up. She turned and began walking out of the small dining room. Snape wasted no time following her. He knew just how precarious his situation was. One misstep and the Dark Lord could kill him without warning. Being familiar with the manor, he could guess their destination after only a short walk. The main hall was just 2 turns away. Since he was being taken to the largest room in the house, this would likely not be a private meeting as he'd initially expected. He spotted the large double doors, and as he anticipated, Trisha walked directly toward them. What he hadn't expected was to see 2 familiar faces standing on each side of the door, waiting for him. It was none other than Draco Malfoy and his mother Narcissa. The former lady of the manor lifted her gaze to look at him with what appeared to be a genuine smile. Severus, it's been so long. In his eyes she looked as beautiful as he remembered, with her long platinum hair and piercing blue eyes, yet she seemed incredibly sad. Draco, however, was very different than he remembered. His once blue eyes were now a bright, unnatural yellow. His cruel smirk revealed a pair of sharp fangs. The boy was no longer hiding his dark nature. Not that he had ever been good at it. So, you dare to come here, Professor? Draco sneered at Snape. Snape would like to say he was surprised to see that his godson had become a vampire, but knowing the boy's personality, he wasn't. What's wrong, Professor? Don't be scared. I won't bite you, Draco chuckled. Snape chose to remain silent. Draco likely thought he was more intimidating than he actually was. Draco, that's enough. Severus has always been a family friend. Narcissa told him. You shut up. I have another family now. A better one. Draco huffed. He was still angry with his mother for refusing the dark gift and choosing to remain a useless human. Master Draco, we mustn't delay this meeting. The Lord must not be kept waiting, Trisha reminded him politely, as the young vampire had proven to have a short temper, much like his aunt. Right. Then what are you waiting for? Open the doors. Draco calmed down. Even he knew better than to keep the Dark Lord waiting. Trisha opened the doors without hesitation, and then moved to the side, allowing Snape to walk in. Oh, he had expected to see others inside the hall, but there were far more than he'd imagined. On each side of the hall stood dozens of individuals watching him. Not only humans, but vampires and even giants were present. They were all standing there waiting for something. Between them was a long red carpet that led to a throne at the end. On this throne, a large figure covered in a black tunic was resting comfortably. The figure, who could only be Lord Voldemort, raised one hand. Everyone inside the hall immediately knelt down, even the giants. Snape noted that behind him Draco, Narcissa, and Trisha Zabini were also kneeling. He was the only one left standing and felt increasingly worried by the situation. Should I kneel too? Snape wondered. But he decided that he had to first address the person in question. My lord, come closer. The voice of the Dark Lord seemed to pierce through everything else. But the first thing Snape noticed was that he sounded very different. It had been over 10 years, but he would never forget Voldemort's voice. The Dark Lord had always been intimidating, but his voice had been sweet and charming, even when he was threatening. It created a contrast that one would never forget. But now it was deep and husky, and there was something inhuman about it. As Snape got closer, he glanced to the sides, scanning the crowd. He recognized a few of the men kneeling. Near the end he saw the Carrow twins, McNair, Yaxley, and even the inseparable duo of Crabbe and Goyle Senior. These had all been loyal Death Eaters in the past, but none of those used to be part of the inner circle. Close to the throne, he spotted a pudgy, ugly man he was very familiar with. Peter Pettigrew is still alive. Snape was surprised to see him here. Everyone had assumed he was dead. He was responsible for the deaths of many members of the Old Order of the Phoenix near the end of the last war, including Sirius Black and the Longbottom family. A man and a woman stood on either side of the Dark Lord's throne. When Snape was close enough, they were the only ones who stood to look at him. Rodolphus and Bellatrix Lestrange looked even younger than the last time he had seen them, well over a decade ago. Did they all become vampires too? Snape immediately recognized what they were, with their pale skin and yellow eyes. Bellatrix was grinning at him, but it was hard to tell what she was thinking. Rodolphus, on the other hand, didn't bother to hide his anger, not even a bit. He had always been an emotional man, and it appeared becoming undead hadn't changed that. Snape stopped a good distance away from the throne and glanced at the Lord. It was impossible to see his face under the black hood, likely due to a powerful concealment spell. The only thing he could clearly see was a pair of bright red eyes. Severus Snape, Voldemort finally spoke. My lord. Snape did his best to show respect with a polite bow. You've taken your time returning to my side. My lord, I was mere. I know what you were doing. Voldemort interrupted. I haven't forgotten the conversation with my puppet, nor have I forgotten your excuses. He gestured with his hand, and everyone in the hall stood up at the same time. Tonight I've gathered my inner circle to help me decide your fate. The Dark Lord spoke. Voldemort lifted his hand from the throne, this time moving it forward, as if reaching for something. Snape watched in horror as a skeletal hand emerged from Voldemort's robes. A large wooden staff materialized into existence, and he gripped it firmly. Voldemort's red eyes turned to Snape, followed by a loud chuckle. Surprised? A few laughs filled the hall briefly before silence returned. Yes, my lord, Snape said, trying his best to stay calm. I suppose it's to be expected. It has been a long time since you last saw me, and I've changed a bit. His left hand moved to the top of his hood, and he began to pull it back. I'll allow you to see me then. Snape had to cover his mouth to keep from screaming when he saw the Dark Lord's face, because he had none. His current head was devoid of skin or muscles. It was a pearly white skull, though it didn't even look like a human skull. It had pointed protrusions everywhere, and at the top they seemed to form something resembling a crown. His red eyes grew brighter as he leaned closer. Tell me, Severus, what do you think of the new me? Snape remained silent, frozen by shock. He'd seen many things since entering the magical world, but nothing like this. He knew that Voldemort had dabbled in necromancy, the most taboo branch of magic, even more forbidden than blood magic. But it seemed the Dark Lord had done more than just experiment with it. He had transformed himself into an undead. Snape wasn't sure how Voldemort had achieved this, but he knew he had to find something positive to say. It's magnificent, my lord, he managed to murmur. Magnificent, is it? Voldemort leaned back in his golden throne. Snape couldn't detect any reaction from him. His skeletal face revealed nothing. Of course you're magnificent, my lord. Bellatrix seized the chance to join in, her eyes wide with reverence as she stared at her Dark Lord. You are the most magnificent being in the entire world, the most regal and powerful and the most handsome. Enough, Bella. Voldemort interrupted, cutting her off before she could continue. If he let her go on, she might have launched herself at him. He couldn't allow that. He was trying to intimidate Severus into submission. My apologies, my lord, I spoke out of turn. Bellatrix quickly retreated, bowing her head in shame. My lord, you're not seriously considering taking him back, are you? Rodolphus exclaimed, pointing accusingly at Snape. There's no way he wasn't involved in my brother's death. Please, give me permission to rip his head off. Voldemort's gaze turned cold as he looked at Rodolphus. Were you telling me what to do? Rodolphus's demeanor shifted instantly, his anger replaced by fear. My lord. He quickly dropped to his knees. I only want justice for my brother. And you think I don't? Voldemort's red eyes narrowed as he spoke. Rabastan was one of my most loyal followers, and you know how much I value loyalty. If I thought Severus had anything to do with that unfortunate matter, I'd personally rip his head off. Voldemort turned his gaze to Snape, who felt his blood run cold. But he knows who did it, don't you, Severus? Voldemort asked. Snape nodded. Yes, my lord, it was Albus Dumbledore, with the help of some centaurs. Dumbledore, Rodolphus muttered. Centaurs? Those inbred horses dared to kill one of us. Bellatrix huffed. Why don't you tell us the whole story, Severus? Voldemort ordered. Snape recited the story they had prepared. Dumbledore had placed every protection he could think of in Snape's mind, fully aware that Voldemort was a master of mental arts. They had even removed some of Snape's memories, storing them in containers hidden in the headmaster's office. As Snape spoke, he felt Voldemort probing his mind. He held the Dark Lord's gaze, knowing that looking away would appear suspicious. He had to trust that the preparations were enough. When Snape finished recounting Rabastan's demise, anger filled the hall. How dare they? I want to burn that forest down. Voldemort said nothing at first, allowing his followers to vent while keeping his eyes on Snape, as if weighing his words. This was the first major defeat their side had suffered since they'd returned to Britain. That's enough, Voldemort eventually said. He didn't need to raise his voice, that much was sufficient to hush them. Silence fell over the hall. Do not forget that this is a war. No matter how much we prepare, some losses are inevitable. We knew this from the beginning, and I'm afraid that Rabastan will not be the last. Voldemort's tone was steady. My lord, I am more than willing to die for you. Bellatrix hurried to say. You already did, Snape thought, but held his tongue. As vampires, she and her husband could no longer be counted among the living. Now, one of the biggest obstacles left in this country is going to be to take over Hogwarts. The castle was designed as an impenetrable fortress when all defenses are activated, and Albus Dumbledore is there. We already had a plan to address that obstacle, but Voldemort's red eyes swept the room before landing on Snape once more. I believe you mentioned that you had a way to end this in a more expedited manner. Is that true? It is, my lord. If you allow me, I believe I can help you end Dumbledore's life within a month, leaving the castle free for the taking, Snape said. Is that so? Then I wish to hear all the details, Voldemort demanded. Snape explained how he had developed an untraceable poison that he could slip to Dumbledore. It would gradually weaken him until he'd be completely unable to use magic. At that point, the greatest wizard the world had ever known would be as defenseless as a muggle. After their discussion, Voldemort handed Snape a one-time use portkey that would take him outside, allowing him to leave. Do you really trust him, my lord? Rodolphus asked once they were alone. Voldemort chuckled. Of course not. Severus is like a venomous snake. You don't get two foes. Then why let him leave? Why not just kill him? This could be one of Dumbledore's schemes, Bellatrix pointed out. Voldemort nodded. It could be. And if it is, then I'll give him the ending he deserves. But there's a chance he's telling part of the truth. And if so, I'd be a fool not to take the opportunity. There's little risk, just 2 puppets at the castle and little more. A direct assault on Hogwarts would lead to heavy losses. Eliminating the headmaster in this way would make the conquest much simpler. I knew it. My lord is merciful, Bellatrix gushed. He takes this risk because he cares about us. Bella, control yourself, Rodolphus scoffed. Voldemort tapped his bony hand on her head, and she looked blissful. Of course I care for my followers. I always have. As long as they were useful to him at least. You revealed your true appearance to him. What if he tells the old headmaster? Rodolphus asked. There's nothing they can do with that information, Voldemort said, waving his skeletal hand in front of him. They don't know what I truly am, and if they did, they'd only be able to scream in despair. Voldemort's red eyes gleamed with malevolence. For I am the god of death. December Usually Hogwarts was quiet on New Year's Eve, with most students at home celebrating with their families. This year, things were different. Because of the Triwizard Tournament, many foreign students were staying at the castle, along with local students who wanted to participate in the holiday events. First, there had been the Yule Ball on the 25th, and tonight the professors had organized a New Year's Eve party. Although simpler and without ministry personnel, it was enough to keep nearly half the student body at Hogwarts for the entire break. The mood at breakfast was buzzing with excitement as students discussed their plans for the night. Can't they stop kissing at least until after breakfast? Seamus groaned, moving away from a couple before dropping down beside Harry. At least Ron isn't here to see this. The boy was grateful for that. He had not taken well to the news of the official new couple being formed, and felt like he was being pushed away. Harry lifted his eyes from his plate and glanced to his left. His sister Lyra wasn't being particularly subtle in her public display of affection with her new boyfriend Neville, and they had gotten worse after Ginny left to spend the rest of the break with her family. They haven't stopped since the Yule Ball, Lavender observed with a smirk. They could at least go somewhere else. This isn't the place for that, Hermione added with a deep frown. I'm surprised Professor Umbridge hasn't said anything. Isn't this a blatant breach of her rules? Parvati noted. Professor Umbridge hasn't been the same since she came back from the hospital, Hermione remarked, and she knew that was an understatement. Umbridge's attitude had completely changed, and she always looked absent and quiet. Mate, how can you let your sister do that? Seamus nudged Harry. Harry sighed. What was he supposed to do? It's not like he enjoyed watching them, but Lyra was old enough to make her own choices, and telling her to stay away from the boy would only drive her further onto his side. Besides, Neville wasn't a bad influence. If anything, Lyra was a bad influence on him. That's enough, you two. Finally, Professor McGonagall approached the couple. I know you're all on break, but the Great Hall is hardly the place for that kind of behavior. Lyra and Neville quickly apologized and left the hall together, surely to continue somewhere else. Ginny, Ron, and the twins were all absent, having returned home for the holidays. From what he'd heard, Ginny hadn't even attended the Yule Ball. Harry couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. His eyes drifted to the Slytherin table. Somehow, Daphne must have noticed his gaze, as she glanced back with a slight smile. She had stayed at Hogwarts over the break to spend more time with him, while her sister had returned home. Her friend Tracy was also still at the castle, but mostly because her new boyfriend was staying as well. So Harry, what about you? He heard someone speaking to him and turned his head. Hermione, Lavender, and Parvati were all looking at him with interest. Sorry, I wasn't following the conversation. What about me? He asked. We were talking about tonight's ball, Hermione explained. Yes, and we were wondering if you had any plans, Lavender added. Since you missed the Yule Ball, Parvati chimed in. Don't think that we didn't notice. Oh, that. I haven't thought about it. You know, a lot of girls would have been happy to go with you. My sister Padma has had a crush on you since at least the second year. Parvati said, we even heard a rumor that the French champion asked you to the ball. Was that true? Lavender asked. You shouldn't believe everything you hear, Harry decided to say. There was no need to talk about that. Well, I know that. Lavender was, after all, the source of most of those rumors. I knew it wasn't true, That one sounded particularly crazy. Parvati chuckled. She is easily the most popular girl this year. So, you're not going to attend? Hermione asked. No, I don't think so, Harry replied. That's too bad, but if you change your mind and need a date, let me know. My sister would go with you, Parvati offered. Isn't Padma already going with Michael Corner? Lavender asked. Parvati dismissed the question with a wave. She'd drop him in a second to go with Harry, I'm sure of it. Harry finished his meal and walked out of the Great Hall alone. He didn't plan on attending the ball, but he did have other plans. Another wooden target dummy exploded into pieces. Harry had lost count of how many he'd destroyed tonight, but he didn't feel tired at all. The room of requirement could easily regenerate them, so he continued. At least until he sensed someone standing outside. He made the door appear, and soon it opened. Daphne entered, wearing her usual robes and looking at him with a serious expression. I know you told me to come here in my normal robes, but please tell me that tonight's plan isn't just blowing up dummies. Harry looked back at her. You could have a bit more confidence. Of course I have prepared something. He used a cleaning spell on himself and made the target dummies go away. Now let's see. While most of the castle inhabitants were having fun, the headmaster and Snape were having a serious conversation in his office. All of a sudden Snape clutched his arm, looking as if he were in intense pain. Severus. What is it? Dumbledore asked. Snape gasped for breath. He had hoped to never feel this unpleasant sensation again. I've been called,